So I believe in this. Live, love, and laugh is my saying. Live, love, and laugh. And our faith as a PK is tested because of our position. We're not our parents. We are our own individual. Hi, my name is Cindy. I'm the founder and owner of CHEM, which is an entertainment company. And today I would like to talk to you about being a PK, a preacher's kid. I grew up in a Christian family, so I've been in church all my life. When I was younger, my dad and my mom has always been very active in church. My dad was a trustee, my mother was an usher, and then they were presidents over the choir, and things just got more into it. So I've been in church all my life. When I was 12, I'll never forget, I was 12 years old. I was in South Carolina for the summer, and my grandmother told me, "So your father's going to be a preacher." And I remember thinking, my father's going to be a preacher? Why? Like, what is going on? Why? So anyway, by the time I came back home, my dad was now a preacher. We were at Preacher's Temple, Church of God in Christ in Patterson. And at first, I didn't see a difference. It was no big deal. My dad's a preacher, my mother's a teacher, whatever. Not until I got a little older as a teenager, then I realized the difference. When I turned about 16, my dad became a pastor of a church. And that's when everything started. I think everything started. I think being a pastor's kid, a PK, is a bittersweet thing. People give PK such a bad rap. They say preacher kids are the worst kids. They always have all this stuff going on. But they don't understand that preacher's kids go through a lot of emotional, mental, as well as spiritual situations that is kind of hard to deal with. So it's not that we're the worst kids. It's just that we're under the spotlight. And because we're under the spotlight, people seem to see our good and our bad, which because of us being PKs, they prefer to see our worst thing than our good thing, if that makes sense. So I remember when people would say, "Oh, you a PK, you PK," and I used to be like, "Yeah, I'm a PK." And what does that mean? It was like, y'all are the worst. We're the same. We're teens. We go through the same thing that other teens go through. We go through our rebellious stage. We go through our trying to find ourselves stage, and which all teens do. But because you're a PK, it seemed to be, how can I say, highlighted. And I think that PKs, as a teenager, you go through more emotional changes than you do anything. As a PK teen, you're trying to find yourself. You're trying to grow into who you are instead of being that preacher's kid, which is a fight. Because now you have to stay under guidelines because everybody's watching you. At the same time, you're trying to live your life the way that you feel that's needed to. And if you're not a rebel like myself, it can be kind of hard to do. I think a lot of pre-K kids turn to drugs and alcohol because they're trying to deal with a lot of the things that come their way, which mainly is people. Their parents are married to the church, so they're missing out on a lot of parental things, so they tend to turn to other things. How can I say it? I'm not going to say that church people make PKs drink and do drugs, but the stress and the emotional abuse is what makes them turn to the alcohol and to the drugs and to the fast life. People don't understand how being a pastor's kid, you have people that some love you because of who you are and some hate you just because of who you are. It's like a psychological, I don't even know how to word it, but it's just rough. I was saying before, my parents growing up and being 16 and my parents being married to the church, it was difficult. You know, we would have concerts. I remember my brother and I was very active in school. And my brother was a very good football player. And my dad them never made his games because it was either Bible study or they were in a revival or they had to do different things, you know. And I remember being in a play and everybody's parents were there, and my parents weren't able to because that week there was a revival in Virginia that they had to attend. And I'm not saying that it was that I didn't get love. My parents were very good at expressing how they felt about us. It became a norm for me and my brother. It wasn't like, my friends would be like, Dad, your mom not coming. It's like, no, it was normal. We've been in church all our life. So we were kind of used to them not being a part of other things if it didn't really have to do with church. But I do remember I had a Christmas concert one time in high school, and I was in a concert choir and we're singing and everything, and I looked and I'm like, my mother and father back there, and I was so shocked. Like, I was surprised that they actually made it. So it wasn't like we were messed up over it. It's like when you're used to something, it becomes your norm that you don't know that there's something wrong with it. Like, I didn't feel like my parents were neglecting us being married to the church. We just felt like that's just how it goes. That's just what they are. We do Bible study on Thursdays. We had YPH on these days. We have Sunday. You knew to be in church all day because you had morning service, you had afternoon service, and if you had homework during the week, you brought it to church because you had to be at church at the revivals. And other people might like, Dad, that's messed up. But when you growing up into a lifestyle like that, you don't see anything wrong with it. You just know that's what it is. You automatically know you're in church on Sunday. It's just like, you have to go to school Monday through Friday. You knew that there were certain things that had to do with church that was going to be without a question. They say to me, how does it feel when, you're a pastor kid and you want to hang out with your friends, you want to go to party? I grew up majority of white kids because I ended up going to a Christian school. And my parents, to me, weren't the traditional pastors, and I believe, because my parents didn't push religion and stuff down our throats. They allowed us to live. We played sports. We were able to participate in our school things. They didn't give us parties, but my uncle them threw my sweet 16 or my 18th birthday party. So they didn't say that we couldn't live life. They just wanted us to live life that's in a way that God respects our way of being. It wasn't about people. I was always called my mother said I was rebellious, and I was called the radical one because I didn't allow church people or other things that I've seen other pastor kids go through. I wouldn't allow it for my life. Meaning, like, and I always tell people, that's your pastor, that's your first lady. I'm not them. I'll hurt your feelings, and I'm not the one. So those members at our church kind of looked at me like, oh, she got an attitude, or she off the chain, or whatever. It wasn't that. It was just that I wasn't going to allow anybody to determine on how I'm going to feel about life. It just wasn't going to happen. And it seems to me that church people tend to put pastor kids in a place that they have to be a certain way. You have to carry yourself a certain way. You have to look a certain way. You have to, do things. You got to participate, and I'm thankful that my parents never forced that on us. It's just that certain things that we just automatically knew that we had to do. We never wanted to bring shame upon them by doing something crazy to the point where, they hit the newspaper or anything like that. But we did our thing. How can I say it? It's bittersweet. You have people who felt that being a pastor's kid, you aren't supposed to know about, R&B artists, or you're not supposed to get your ears pierced, or you shouldn't wear makeup, which I wore makeup since I was 16. Hello. I got my ears pierced when I was young. Hello. But I think that's why, okay, let me go back. A couple of years ago, me and my brother, we're still involved in church. A couple of years ago, we were at a dinner, and a pastor said to my parents, while we were sitting here, what did you guys do? How is it that your kids are still involved in church all these years? Because a lot of pastor kids, when they get older, they want nothing to do with church. They want nothing to do with church. They want nothing to do with church people. They want, they're burnt out. And my mom says, "Oh, ask them," And one thing I said, my parents allowed us to live. They didn't make it. They didn't make church and church people mandatory for us to. They didn't push it down our throat, if that makes sense. They allow us to live. We were still able to go with our friends. We were still able to do certain things, but at the same time, they taught us the Bible in a way that we should live. Like at home, they were our pastors, but they were our parents. We played Monopoly. We had a movie night. We chilled out. I remember laughing or hanging out in the backyard, and so it wasn't like we was home and had to have Bible study, or you only you home and it's like father this and mother this. No, they lived. They were our pastors at church, but they were our parents at home. And I think that's the big difference when you have pastors that are able to still be your parent and not just it's all about God all the time. It helps you to understand and to want to be more part of the family of Christ. I think the children, the PKs that don't want anything to do with church and church people, because they was hurt so bad that they weren't allowed to live. They weren't allowed to express themselves. They were judged on everything they did. They had pressure, and they tend to not want to be around that anymore. So I'm thankful that my parents did give me and my brother the opportunity to live our lives and live it as a Christian. But they didn't force us to be so upright all the time. Like, they allow us to live. My parents taught us the word, and my dad always says, if it's not in the word, all that other stuff is just stuff. Go to the word. What God says is that's the way you're supposed to, that's your guideline of life. It's not like, you have to be perfect. That's your guideline. And that's what I believed. And I guess that's why today I can still say that I love the Lord. I live my life. I have an entertainment business, which I deal with secular people all the time. But because of the way we were raised, I don't see that being any, like, that's not, because I have to deal with these, I have to deal with certain things, and I have to be in certain places, have nothing to do with my relationship with God. And that's because of the way my parents trained us, I believe. This is to all the preachers' kids that are listening. I know sometimes you may go through a situation where you're wondering whether you believe or not. And a lot of PK, which is preachers' kids, tend to leave the church and tend to not want to be bothered with God, or after you forget about all the nonsense, after you stop hearing the people talking in your ears or talking about you or making you feel like you're unworthy or making you feel that you're not accepted, all these things, once everything is done, it's between you and God. It's a personal situation. And I feel that if you are at that point where you don't know if you believe or not, you need to take yourself away from the situation, the people, your surroundings, and get to know what's really going on with you inside. Have that personal conversation. If you don't believe anymore, okay, you don't believe anymore, but don't let situations and people push you away from something that you know that you grasp for in your heart. Don't let your position as a PK determine your relationship with Christ. It ain't about your parents. It's not about your mom and dad. They figure this out. They're preachers. They're preaching. They're doing it. Figure out who you are. Figure out what you need to do to make yourself complete. Because we all have a purpose. And just because our parents' purpose was to preach, that doesn't mean that's going to be yours. And I know some people are being pressured to be next in line. They tell me that all the time. Oh, you're going to carry you're next in line and this and that. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. I don't fight it, but I'm not going to force it, because God gave me a purpose. And if that's what he wants for me, then he's going to make sure that I'm in line with that, or I understand that, and I'm going to be happy in it. But if it's not your thing, never let anyone force you to do or to be in a position that you don't feel comfortable in. If you are not a preacher, then you're not a preacher. So the name of my company is CHEM, which means is an acronym for Cindy Hunt Entertainment Management. which is going to be changed differently. I mean, it's going to soon, I'm doing something a little different because I kind of want to lean more into the reason why I started CHEM. And that's a good one, because the reason why I started CHEM was to give Christian entertainers or Christian artists a platform that's similar to the secular world. Because at that 2008, I felt like Christian artists, you know, they did stuff in church, they did things at the church picnics, but that was it. I felt that their message was so wide. Their message was a message that the world needed to hear. So my goal was, I'm going to open up this entertainment company, and I'm going to give, you know, these Christian artists a platform, just like Puffy was doing at the time. And I was excited about that. But what happened was the body of Christ wasn't ready for it. And God took me in a whole other direction. I started noticing I'm dealing with more secular people. I'm like, God, well, this wasn't what I was going to do. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because those people that I started dealing with, they used to say, there's always something different about you. And I'd be like, yeah, what? And they're like, I don't know, but there's something different. And then the more I began to talk to these people, they realized, you're a Christian. I'm like, yeah. It was like, oh. Then they would tell me, yo, you're the coolest Christian I ever met. You never judged us. You never made us feel whatever. But you always had that special thing about you. I'm like, yeah. So then I would invite them to our church. And they were like, I'm in the church at whatever time. And then they would start coming to our church. Now we have all these people just left clubs last night, but coming to get the word. And one day I was sitting back and I'm looking at them and I'm like, so God, is that what you're getting ready to do for me? Is that going to be my new ministry where I actually go out and about and introduce you to them, or give them the door to open for them to realize that it's open to them, that they can come in? And then I love it. And I was excited about it. But then I had the issue when these people were coming, you had the traditional church folks. And this gets me upset. You had the traditional church people that would not open their arms to them. Like they would make them feel uncomfortable, or they were very judgmental, and then they felt like that they didn't want to come back. You know, we had a pastor that was teaching the word, and they were excited because they were getting to learn about Christ in ways that they never did before. They was like, oh, I never wanted to be bothered because church people was this, church people that, but you guys are cool. And I get to learn the word, and their lives were changing. And I'm like, wow, God, I see what you're doing, and now I know what I have to do. So at this point now, I didn't care about the church folks that was like, oh, how you all in church and you're a pastor's daughter, but yet you be out here with these and you be doing this. Because of how I saw these people coming in and their lives being changed, because they now have a different view of seeing Christ for who they need to, how they need to see him. I didn't care about how church folks felt about me, because I'd rather bring two people from out the dark and allow them to be in a position where they can see the light for themselves than to deal with all these church folks who's been in church all their lives and still ain't get it right. So it was like, okay, you guys, you know better. You know what I mean? Whatever y'all know better. But these people want to be loved. They want to know. They want to feel that feeling of peace and want to know how to understand what they always felt all this time. So when CHEM started, that was my goal. And they were coming in the church or whatever. And then I just started saying to people, look, you're not gonna run them away. You're not here to judge. You're here to open your arms to them and invite them in and give them the ability to learn and to embrace God for who they need to, the way that they want to. So once I realized that, the way people talk about, oh, how you going to be a PK in church and you all doing this and doing that, I did not care. And I still don't care, because at the end of the day, if I can open, or if I can introduce Christ to one person, that's enough for me, you know. And I remember one rapper that I met, he said to me, I'll never forget, he was like, why every time you say something, you always got to put God in it? I'm like, because that's my beginning, my end. What? And he would go off whatever, and oh, it's always God with you. Because I'm like, yeah. Because even when I'm talking to them, I'm like, look, God got me, so da. And he was like, at this time, he didn't believe. He was like, I wake myself up, whatever. And that was what, 2009, and now 2018. This guy can preach if you want. Like, he still rap, but his love for Christ is so deep, and his faith is so strong. And all I keep thinking is, like, what if I was one of those people that thought I was so churchy and I was so sanctified and holified that I couldn't deal with him? You know what I mean? That right there, him just embracing God and loving Christ for who he is, means the world to me. And that's why I would not stop doing Kim. I would always be out there, because out there, people have been in the dark so long, they don't know light. And I don't have to go out and preach and throw my Bible at people. All I gotta do is show love, show compassion, and be an ear. And when that opportunity comes, God will do the rest. I just need to be at peace. And me being in the entertainment business and not putting myself in a box allow me to be that instrument that God can use. And I'm happy about that. So Kim is going to be here from now until, and I'm still going to do my thing. I'm still going to go to my shows and meet different people. And every time God opened that, give me an opportunity to witness and to introduce him to these people, I will be able to do it. Because I'd rather work out there than in the church, if that makes sense. But that's just me. Anyway, I believe that Christianity is so personal that a lot of the doctrines that we were taught has nothing to do with being a Christian. And I think that me at this age now, I love my teacher, the teaching and the doctrine that my parents gave me, but I'm learning to understand that this thing is so personal that a lot of the things that we as church folks get caught up on has nothing to do with Christianity at all. For generations and generations, we were taught certain things that is not in the Word. For generations we was instructed to act a certain way that's not in the Word. I think today we need to learn to read that Word for ourselves, get an understanding for ourselves, and learn how to live the life that God had intended for us to live. We should be happy. We should have peace. We should have joy. And one of the things that he tells us to do is to love one another. And I believe that if we as the body of Christ would just learn to love each other, it's not about when you go to church, what you're wearing, and all that other stuff. If you don't have love in your heart, and if you don't know how to treat people, how can you be a Christian? To me, Christianity is more than just saying you are. It's a way of life. It's the way of not in a judgmental way, like, oh, you got to be so perfect, or you should drink, you should do this. No, not in that no thing. I always say to people, when you speak things, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it true? Because sometimes we don't have to be so rough. So the reason why I felt the need to do this video mainly is because as a Christian or as a PK, I just want people that are out there, if you're listening or if you have questions, don't put yourself in a box. Don't put yourself in a place where you're unhappy. Be who you are. Embrace your purpose. If you can embrace your purpose, you will find happiness. You will find peace. All these restrictions and these different things that people throw at you, learn to read the Word for yourself. Get an understanding. Ask God to help you get an understanding. Find your rhythm. Do your thing. And live, love, and laugh. Because God wants you to have a peaceful life. He wants you to live life of abundance. He wants you to be, you're already blessed. So live that life. Continue to be blessed, favorable, and get out that box. And don't let anybody put you in a box, because you'll become miserable. If by chance you want to get into this entertainment industry and you need some representation or management, give me a call. Or check my website out, www.kimentertainment.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Or even if you just need some advice or just want to chat up a little bit, I'm there.